Just messing around in the shop today. I've been hitting the videos pretty hard since I've been out this week for Christmas. I've had lots of free time, so today I'm just messing around with my Bruiser frame. I've kind of got an idea of what I want to do. I'm going to be using my old maroon Hilux body that's bobbed and trimmed, and I want to make a more serious crawler. Back when I first started this channel a year and a half ago, a little more than that now, I had just a scratch built out of cheap parts. It was like I had a green Hilux body, and it was bobbed a little too short in my opinion. And it was leaf sprung in the front, 4-link in the rear. It was on an Vintage D90 frame, so it wasn't real great. It actually performed pretty well. It was real heavy, and that was some of my first tube work, making roll bars and stuff. And that's since been parted out and passed along. And I'm kind of bored with my red Hilux. I'm hoping to get a new body for that in the future. So I've got the parts laying around, and I bought this Bruiser. I've just about decided to part out what I don't need. So I'm going to be listing some of that stuff on eBay, the axles and the transmission. And I'm going to try to take some of the older stuff I have and some spare parts that I've got, excuse me, and turn this into a functioning crawler again with my red Hilux. So yeah, there's no real purpose to this. I don't have a real set thing. It's just me messing around in the shop, and I'll talk about some of the things with the Bruiser. Alright, so I'm sure most of y'all are familiar with the Bruisers. In case you don't know it's a Tamiya Bruiser. This is the granddaddy of the modern generation rock crawler. They came out in the early 80s. It's a nice C-channel frame. Leaf springs all around. They had a 3-speed transmission and independent axles. They had a solid rear and front axle, just like the current trucks at the time. They had the original Toyota Hilux body. The Tamiya one is different than the RC4wd drive bodies. I'm sure you've seen the beds are shallow on the Tamiya body. And the Tamiya bodies come with round headlights, Toyota emblems, and I believe the bed even has Toyota on the backside on the tailgate embossed into it. They were officially licensed, so that's why we don't see those anymore. But the main issue with the Bruiser has always been the chassis. It gets wider at the rear. Now this is the original Bruiser axle, and this is an RC4wd Yota 2. Now you can see it's way wider. I don't know why they did that from the factory. I think it was stability, having a wider track, but that's always been an issue when you convert these into rock crawlers, which is all we had back in the early 2000s. They made some hub conversions. The front axle is narrower, just a little, but you can get hub conversions for these and make them normal width. But what you had to do on the rears, it was called a rummy mod, and you took a front axle, and it was different ends that go on it to make it a locked out straight axle that was the right width for a scale look. That stuff's kind of hard to find these days. I think RC4wd Drive still sells, or they used to recently still sell the rummy mod ends for the front axle. But that meant to have a scale look on your Bruiser, you had to buy another front axle somewhere and convert it. And you still had to convert your front axle to the right size hubs, so these wide 3-bolt hubs that are on there. So for all intents and purposes, it's easier just to buy new axles from RC4wd Drive. And they do make a Yota 1 axle that is the right width for this wider frame. But I've had several. I even had one of the RC4wd Drive Yota trucks, and that's basically their version of the Bruiser. And it was a pretty good truck. It was a little outdated. Their technology has come a long way. The transmissions and stuff have improved. I believe it had a disruptor transmission in it, kind of basic. Had the old Triton transfer case, which I have right here. See, when I part out a rig, I end up keeping stuff that I think I might need later, and it may come in handy on this. So excuse me, sorry guys, I'm all stuffed up today. Weather's changing back cold here. So what I'm going to do here, I know most people prefer to do a 3 or 4 link out front and leaf springs in the rear when you do a hybrid setup like that. But I don't have any of the Bruiser axles. Now the Bruiser axle, like I said, is the same as this Yota axle, but the leaf perches are out wider. They're made specifically for this and the RC4wd Yota frames. So what I'm going to try to do is to rig up a 4-link using the RC4wd truss and mount it all inside of the rails and have my 4-link set up like that. So it'll still give me the right width and everything will look nice and fine and dandy, but it'll fit on this frame, so I don't have to buy another axle. Because right now I've got most of my parts from my cruiser. I've got spare Yota 2 axles, I've got an R3 transmission, a single speed, and I've got other transmissions. I've got this old R2, I think this is what this one was. It's been modified for, roughly modified for a normal motor. I've got this disruptor, but I think that's going to go in the rat rod build. So I've got a lot of parts. I've got that transfer case. I've got another ultimate scale transfer case. I've got shocks. I've got everything I need to basically build a truck again, just from scraps that I have laying around. So that's what we're going to attempt to do. Like I said, I got the body. The only thing I don't have for this is a motor and ESC. I've got a really good servo out of the cruiser. Yeah, we'll just have to look around. Again, with these, another issue is mounting servos. This one has been modified. There's notches on the front cross member, and it's come with some of these brackets, which I'm still not clear on how or where to mount. But we'll figure all that out. But to me, the first step is suspension. Let's get this thing on all fours with the right wheelbase and the right track width, and then we'll worry about mounting the body, mounting electronics, mounting the drivetrain and everything, getting all that set up. So I'm going to start jacking around here. I got to get that rear axle off and the leaf springs off that. And I think I've got some funny business going on with these front leaves. One is vastly larger than the other, sticks up a good bit higher. So I don't know what they've used on this. Like I said, I bought this used on eBay. And yeah, so we're just going to make the best out of parts and see what we can come up with. Alright guys, so I got the chassis stripped down. I had about 16 different type of screws on it. And someone decided to spray paint it silver. Got some weird stuff like this front cross member here has been heavily modified. And it looks like it's been polished by hand, which is kind of cool. I'm not sure what I'm going to do with the chassis yet. I took it apart because the finish on it does look terrible. It's very rattle can silvery. I've painted some of these before. It's just no luck. It's got a nice galvanized finish to it. So I'm going to take some Scotch-Brite to it and see if maybe I can bring back some of its original luster. I could sandblast it, but all that I have in my cabinet over there is glass beads. And they really leave a paintable finish. They don't really leave a nice finish at all. It's kind of a texture, and it'll dull it down and just look like bare metal, which if push comes to shove, that'll work. But I would really like to have something a little bit better looking than that. I really don't want to paint it because that's just, you know, it is whatever. But I gotta go through. I took everything apart, so I'm gonna try to replace everything with scale hardware from Locked Up RC. I don't know if I have enough of all of it because there's so many different sizes. We'll just have to see as we go. I've got a little container here full of some zinc coated and stainless scale hex head. I know there'll be some spots where that stuff won't work, and I don't have any washers. I'm out of stainless steel washers somehow. But yeah, it happens. So I'm gonna go ahead and start trying to scuff that down. I've got some spare cross members, some shock mounts, stuff like this that I won't be able to really sand. I think I have some original ones laying around somewhere in a little bin. So I'm going to go through and try to find my stash of OG Bruiser parts and see what I can use over on this build. But yeah, that's where I'm at. I'm going to keep trucking. Alright guys, so happy with the outcome. This is the one I've Scotch-Brited. Not sure if you can see. There's still a little bit of paint on it, but it's gotten it down to this kind of stainless look. You can see a few spots on the bottom here with the paint that I haven't gotten off. I think that's good enough. It looks much improved over this rattle can, and it's still leaving enough of the galvanized finish on from the factory. It ought to keep it from rusting. So I'm going to let my hand rest here. I've been Scotch-Brite sanding that down by hand for a little bit. And then we'll knock out this other rail. And I still got to look for my other cross members. Ah, my hand really does hurt. I got a cramp. So once we get that all cleaned up, then we'll start looking at throwing it back together. Alright guys, I'm just trucking away here. I can't find a lot of my old Bruiser stuff. I don't know. I think it's in one of these 2 big boxes of stuff I have from decades ago. I'm not going to dig through it, so I'm just going to keep reusing stuff. I didn't sand the cross members down. I'm just going to reuse them. I've already got the back 3 in, and I've been using some locked up RC scale hardware. You can see I'm running out of stuff, so these 2 have zinc coated. The back one has stainless. It's just going to be a mix and match, but I think it'll work just fine. Getting close to hanging the front suspension. You can see these leaf springs are a little bent out of shape, and somebody shoved some rubber in there. Now, since I'm not going to leaf the rear, Bruisers came with these little tiny doodads here to slide in the eye of the leaf, and I think I've got enough to do all 4 for the front between what this truck had on it. So I'm going to roll with that. I've got a lot of leaf springs, so I'm going to go through and find the best matching set that I have for the front. And not sure yet about transmission and all that stuff. Once we get it standing on its own, I think, on all 4 tires, get the wheelbase right, then we'll start looking at what and how the transmission, how we're going to work all that. I have another transmission crossmember here that I had way back in the day. I'd cut down and have holes drilled in it and custom mounts made for an axial transmission. But I don't want to do that. I want to have a transfer case in the middle. But it probably still will require some trimming. Get those 2 humps off the middle so the driveline and stuff can clear. We'll just have to see. It's kind of fun because I haven't done anything like this in 2 or 3 years. And I've learned so much from building these hot rods from scratch that I thought maybe I could bring some of that knowledge over back to the crawlers, kind of fabbing up stuff, because I used to try this kind of stuff all the time before I really had the stockpile of parts or the know-how to make it work. So I'm excited to see what I can make happen out of this pile of junk. Still no clue on how to mount a servo. It looks like there's 2 holes here. I don't know if they had it mounted this way, and that's all going to depend on where the transmission goes, so I don't know yet. I'm just going to keep bolting stuff together until we run into some problems, and we'll pick back up from that. Alright guys, so I'm trying to pick some leaf springs here for the front. I've got most of the spares that I own laying out here, and you can see they're all various lengths and bends, and it's hard because most of them are used. I haven't bought any new leaf springs in a long time. It's all just stuff I've had left over, so I'm trying to find 2 that are close enough. These 2 here in the middle are off just a little bit as far as the curve. I think those are going to work the best. They've got roughly the same length. They're a little bit longer. These are, I think, Bruiser leaves. These are probably some off of my old RC4wd Yota, which had longer leaves than the Trailfinder 2. I could use the leaves off the rear, but they have a really heavy curve. They're in good shape. The ones that were on the front of this Bruiser frame were pretty flattened out. Something about the mount on the Bruiser axle had bent them over backwards, so they were kind of dipped down in the center where they bolted to the axle. A little stressed, a little overbent. So these are nice and flat, and that's what I had on my previous build. They gave me a really nice droop setup, and that's kind of what I'm going for with this. I don't want this thing to set like a monster truck. I'm not looking to put 2.2s on it or anything. It's going to be most likely 1.55s. Most likely the Mickey Thompson Baja Claws that I had on the Trailfinder 2 with this body. But hopefully can get a little bit more flex out of this and a little better performance. So I think I'm going to go with those 2 in the center. I'm going to go ahead and test fit them and see how the shackles and everything look. I'm just going to run the original shackles. Like I said, I couldn't find a lot of my parts. I've got some of these that are black RC4wd drive, but they have been drilled out. I all my aftermarket RC4wd Bruiser parts, I drilled out the shackles and hangers to clear the, where are they? Clear these type of bolts, because it makes it easier when doing leaf springs. But on this, I'm going to go ahead and keep it true to Bruiser nature, and we're just going to use the original stuff. And I'm going to run a bolt and these little spacers that go inside the eyelets of the leaves. So I got to take the back leaves apart to steal those little brass shims that go in there, and I've got to find some bolts. I have been swapping everything over to Scale Hardware. Looking pretty good. I have upgraded all the nuts that were in places that needed nuts. Like on the inside of there, I bought about 300 of those from China. Let's see. Back here, where it deemed necessary, I went ahead and used button heads for the top side of the cross members and the bottom side of the center cross member. Since you're not really going to see that, and plus the way I'm planning on this, the bed is going to sit, the Mojave body is going to sit flush right on top of here. So I didn't want scale bolts there. You're not going to see them. They would stick up maybe a little too high. So plus I'm running out. So I'm just trying to save space, save my Scale Hardware for visible points on the frame. I got to find another steering link for this Yota 2. I've robbed them all for the rat rods. I know I've got one somewhere. I took one off of my Cruiser already. I don't know where it is, but I'm going to keep looking around. I know I've got one laying around. I think it'll work. We can't really set up steering yet until we figure out where the servo is. The servo is going to be on the front, back side, or this side or that side. That way I know, because the Yota 2s are set up to have the crossover link on the back side of the axle, and it dips down under the yoke, the input shaft. So I don't know yet how that's going to play out. It's an option. You can do it on either side, front or back. I like to do it on the back because it's one less thing to get caught on the rocks. And this front axle Yota 2 is off my old D110. It's got that custom made skid plate. You can see it's seen some use. I'm going to go ahead and leave that on here because I do plan on this being a more serious crawler. So I want to protect that axle a little more. Might look at changing out the diff covers. We'll see. I mean, they're all aluminum, no matter which one you get. So I don't think I'm really actually going to break an axle to the diff cover, but it might look cool to have an aftermarket one or an ARB locker. We'll just have to see. But yeah, I'm going to keep on trucking, making some progress on this thing. I don't really know how far I'm going to take this video. I'm just bored. I'm out for a Christmas vacation, so I'm hanging around the shop, messing around. I've got nothing to do tonight. Just hanging out with you guys. Building tiny trucks. So I'm gonna get back to work. Alright guys, so this is where I'm at. I've got my leaves on. I went with a little bit heavier arch. These were more evenly matched. My flattened ones down there were just off too much. They were off height wise, sitting on the table about 1/8 of an inch. I didn't trust it. These were pretty even. So I've got them on there. I don't have any bolts tightened up yet. I do have the brass pieces in all 4 ends. So they do have a little bit of wobble, which is going to help with flex, but not as much as if you weren't running anything. So I'm kind of working those flatter. I have a helper leaf. Not sure if you can see that. Over here, they're flattened out underneath the bandsaw. I've had them sitting there for about 10 minutes. I'm going to leave them for a while longer. Just trying to... Those were all the springs I had that length, which are I think the second length of the like TF2 pack. They were a little too arched, and they were going to make this thing sit way up high in the front, which I really don't want. The way these Bruiser shackles and stuff set up, whoa, there we go, was it's made to be straight almost. You can see they've got a lot of room back here to flatten out, and I'm not sure yet. These are the original shock mounts. They have these rubber boots, and the original Bruiser shocks just fit up through there with a nut on the end. These are off of that old Vintage what was it, D90 frame that I used on my old Hilux crawler, and they will line up with the bolt holes here on the Bruiser. So I think that may be what I use. They have a little bit of adjustment as far as height, and then they have 3 mounts, 3 holes for the shocks. So that's going to give me some versatility. I've got these, I don't know, RC all-wheel drive. I'm sure they're fresh out of China, but they're really nice looking. I think they're 80mm shocks, and they all feel exactly the same. They feel better than like the stock shocks on the TF2. They all feel very evenly sprung and nice and smooth. So I'm thinking those for this. We'll have to see how the back plays out. With the back being a 4-link, I may want to run like a SCX 10 shock or something with an external coil. So we'll have to see how that plays out. But anyways, I'm going to let those leaf springs set a little bit more. I'm still trying to find my front steering link for this axle here, but I don't know where it went. I've got 2 Yota 2 front axles left, and they're both missing the steering links, and I have one on the rat rod number 2, and I cannot find the other one to save my life. I've got too much junk floating around this shop. I know I took it off, but I have no idea what it's on. I've been going through all my rigs, and it's not on any of them, so it's got to be somewhere. I'm going to start, while I'm waiting on these leaf springs to flatten out, I'm going to start mounting the 4-link truss. I've got all of that. Well, that's a 3-link truss. I've got all the parts. I've got tons of these axle trusses laying around. And start mounting up the rear axle to that, and we'll see how... This is going to be the tricky part, mounting it on this Bruiser frame with it being so wide. So, yep. Alright guys, so I've got the front suspension mounted up, and as you can see, it doesn't fit quite right. My front tire is a little bit too far back. It's making the tire set too far back in the tire well. And the way this works is it moves backwards when it flexes, so big problems there. Not tied exactly to how the body is sitting on the frame. It's just where the bumper fits over the edge of the frame. Now this bumper, I can't remember where I got it from. It's custom machined and it mounts to the body. So it can be moved out a little bit, which I think is probably going to be the best route. Since the rear axle is kind of up in the air as far as where it's going to go, I think moving the front axle or the body back on the frame is going to be the answer to the question. I know a lot of purists are going to be upset because the Yota's original Hilux trucks, the shackle was on the front side of the leaf spring, and by flipping that around, that would fix some of my problems. I'm not sure what to do right here, guys, so I'm going to have to take a little break, do some thinking. I really hate to try to do that because that really, you end up screwing up the frame when you have to modify the front end to accept the shackle and the back side of the axle to accept the hanger. You got to drill a bunch of holes, and it's just kind of a fiasco. So I'm not sure yet. Let me do some brainstorming here and see where we end up. So guys, I've been working away here. I went ahead and attached the body to the rear using the factory body mount holes on the frame. It set the wheelbase right. My front end is just a hair higher. It is setting on the what's left of the frame up here. If you can see that, the lighting's bad. So we'll work that out here later. Right now I just want to get the wheelbase set so I can start mounting up the rear suspension. Front tires are good and centered. The rear of the frame is a little bit lower, so I may have to put some spacers in once I figure out how to mount to those body mounts. Right now I just have it held down with some bolts, washers, and using some RC4wd drive pinion blocks just to clamp it down. This body's been on so many different things. Those holes have been drilled out and drilled out. See if I can get you a look back there. So that's what I'm looking at on the inside. But the wheelbase is set. Everything is nice and functional up front. Even with flex, it still stays pretty well centered in the axle. These big ass tires. So next step, I'm going to try to do this with the body on so it helps line everything up. I'm going to go ahead and flip it over, and I'm going to start looking at 4-link rods and where I can mount. I have the axle, here it is. I already got the stock truss for the RC4wd Drive 4-link on the axle, and we just got to figure out how to hang it back here. So I'm gonna get back to work. Alright guys, so I've got these 4-link rods here that I picked up off of eBay out of China. They are really thick. They look nice. So I'm trying to gauge where I need my link mounts at. So I've got a mark there on the frame. I'm trying to just eyeball the pinion angle and the wheel well. I think I've got it about right. Maybe. It's hard to tell, especially with it being upside down. Ooh, that looks terrible. So I want my pinion angle a little bit down like that. That looks pretty good. So I am going to have to space that mount in from the rail, so I'm going to have to put some spacers inside the rail. Once I get the hole drilled, I am going to cheat and use my caliper to mark the hole on the other rail. And then I'll have to take the body back off, run the drill press, and go from there. But that's dead center from the crack, dead center from the crack. And I do this from the other side. This stuff gets tedious, guys. I'm gonna knock it out, go ahead and drill these holes, and we'll pick up looking at the upper mounts. Alright guys, I think I'm gonna wrap this video up here. I got the lower links on. I shortened them up as much as I could. They just are still a little too long. This thing's looking pretty mean, but I've got it kind of dummied up here. You can see the angle of the lower arms is making, let me get my arm out of the way, it's making the rear axle track backwards. So it really needs to come forward about 5mm in order to flex right with the body line and go into the inner fender like it's supposed to. I could cut out the body more, but I've got a feeling with the lower links mounted as high as they are, it's not going to flex right anyway. We're going to get way too much travel front to rear as each side comes up and down. So I was playing with some ideas like using these to mount the lower arms, but they just hang down too sharp, too abruptly. So I think the best option here is to call it a night, because I'm beat. I've been out here for hours working on this thing, and come back when I'm refreshed, and actually do some brazing, maybe make my own mounts and put use those big rods, but put them right where they belong instead of the best place I can put them on the frame. I think that's just what I'm gonna have to do. Let's see. I want to keep them up as high as possible, but I think I'm gonna have to bump them down just a little bit, and my upper mounts are gonna have to be in the frame rail. So I don't know. There's triangulated 4-link. You can't have your upper and lower rods meet at the same level at the frame line here. So I gotta do some more engineering on that. But we made a lot of progress tonight, and I'm pleased with it. I'm liking the way it's looking. I like these tires and wheels on this body, and I love the original Bruiser frame. It just sticks out down there. It screams not a kit. So yeah, I'm happy so far. Just need to rest up and come back revitalized tomorrow and see what I can come up with. So anyways, sorry guys, it is late. I told you I've been up all night doing this. I appreciate y'all watching and sticking through this long boring video, and hopefully we can get this suspension wrapped up, get some shocks on this thing, and start looking at motor mounts and things like that for tomorrow. So I'll see y'all in the next video.